Let me get you back here. Okay. Oh, there you go. I forgot to push that one button, and now we've got you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, lovely people. This is Marie Alessi with yet another Up Spiral Brief interview, and today I am so excited to introduce you to Susan Wallis. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself to the audience in a minute. Susan and I came across each other on LinkedIn, and I'm not really sure what's happening with the live stream. Let me just check that. Yeah, good. I think it's happening now. So this has never happened before. It actually showed us live, but I had to push the play button. Never happened before. That is bizarre. So Susan, without further ado, would you do us the honor and introduce yourself to our audience before we get started?
Thank you. Marie, it's really, I'm really honoured to be here today. Thank you very much for having me. And it's lovely to speak to your audience. So my name is Susan Wallis. I live in Wollongong, which is about an hour and a half south of Sydney in New South Wales. Don't know where we're all talking to, so we could be across the country, across the world. I'm primarily a mother. It's kind of my my biggest identity and the one I'm most proud of. So the mother of two children, two beautiful girls. I guess the reason I'm here today, and it's important to say up front, is that one of my children, my youngest daughter, Sophie, is 14, and my oldest daughter, Gracie, is forever 13. She passed away nearly 4 years ago. And that's comes to the next part of my identity. I'm very vocal in the disability community. Gracie had significant disabilities, and so I'm the chairperson of a disability provider in Wollongong, and I'm also on another aged care board. I'm all about making impact wherever I can, and I work in the charitable sector as well. So my life's very full, and I can't really fit any more in, but I'm really pleased to fit this in today.
I am so pleased to have you here today, Susan, because you and I already had a bit of a pre-chat behind the camera, and we actually said maybe we should do this in person because we live like 20, 30 minutes from each other. I would really love to meet with you in person one day, but today we chose to do that in front of camera. I just want to start by saying I absolutely love the way that you speak about your girls and how you introduce yourself, because this is really one topic that comes up in our group a lot, that people don't know how to address this question and that often happens. So how many kids do you have? It's such a natural question, you know, or people ask me about my husband and I'm like, oh, well, he's dead. You know, it's always that awkward moment where you're like, how do you address that without making other people feel bad? And it's not really about other people, but you do have that in your mind. So the way you spoke about it, I just love it. You know, my oldest daughter is forever 13. This is really so honoring and so beautiful. So since you jumped straight in, I'm going to do that too and ask you, what would you like to share with us about your daughters, about your family life? Because we are here to share a message of hope, and you have done that so vividly when we spoke with each other. So I said, please, 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 let's do that in front of camera. Can you share a little bit about your family?
So as you know, Marie, I've done quite a lot of public speaking, and I think my message, and I will continue to do public speaking, I think my message is that you can have a good death as well as a good life. And,
wow.
And that you can make the hardest situations the best they can be. There are ways of finding the joy and moving forward so that you heal better. I don't think I'm being particularly articulate, but I think in terms of how we parented Gracie and how we lived with Gracie, and then ultimately how we farewelled her, we did it in a way that gave us all capacity to heal and move forward, and not just our family, but the people around us. You know, you touched on how we speak about her, or how I speak about her. That's a targeted and a conscious way so that other people can also speak about Gracie. Coming back a step, Gracie was actually stillborn and revived. She wasn't expected to live past her very first days or her very first week. So we approach disability from a different angle. And I don't think that should be isolated. I believe that disability is different, not lesser. That's my other key message.
I love it. Thank you.
Approximately 1 in 5 people identify as having a disability. So many of us are disabled. I identify as disabled in a variety of ways. And so if we see disability as just a part of the natural fabric of society, that's kind of point number 1. And then point number 2, coming back to losing Gracie, I had 13 years and 7 days, which is 13 years and 7 days more than anybody should have had. And so I approached every single one of those days as an absolute gift. Now, there were a couple of years in particular that were really hard. So the first couple of years were challenging, and probably the last 12 months was challenging. But despite all of that, I would go back and do it all over again. And I'm even knowing how it was going to end.
I'm having goosebumps all over. This is so beautiful. And, I want to highlight something that you just said, because I personally have not directly been affected by disability by anybody close in my close family. Yes, in my circle of friends, I have been connected to people who live with a disability. I personally never liked the word, the title, the label disability. And what you just said actually brought a thought to me that I want to share quickly. I think it would be so beautiful if we could change it to diff-ability, as in it's a different ability rather than a disability. I think we should really change the wording of that. But yeah, thank you so much for highlighting that, because it's just different. We all have different abilities, and it's phenomenal when you look at people, how these different abilities really shine through and make them so special and so perfect. And I just love it. And I love that you said you saw every single day of those 13 years and 7 days as a gift, because that's the different awareness that we get. And that in itself, I believe, is a huge gift. When we have that awareness, how precious the time is, how precious every single day is that we have together. And when we live through something that is unexpected, that really sharpens our awareness around how special a time is. It really becomes an even bigger gift afterwards. I have experienced that after my dad passed, and I realized, oh my God, every day I have with my friends, with my family, with my kids, with my husband, it gave me so much more awareness and appreciation for the days that I did have with my husband, without knowing that he would pass early too. So thank you so much for saying that. I love it. So tell us a little bit about how you as a family live together, and how, this interruption, I want to call it, I don't want to call it an end, because it's not. It was a very big interruption for your family life, and it really changed after that. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So losing Gracie wasn't entirely unexpected. Like I said, I approached every day as a gift. My personal feeling and my knowledge around disability suggested that we'd lose Gracie at about the age of 15. And so 13 was a little bit younger than I expected. 15, because of Gracie's diagnosis, puberty is a real crunch time. And so around about that 15 is when one of Gracie's diagnoses was epilepsy, and it was actually epilepsy that was one of the big challenges. Hormones and epilepsy don't go well together. So I kind of expected it to be about 15. And Gracie actually had a significant medical incident about 9 months before she died, and she should have actually died at that point. But I stayed in bed with her. She was in hospital. I got into bed with her. Part of the backstory is that my mother died 9 months before Gracie died. So my mother actually died about 6 weeks before Gracie was in hospital, and I thought she was going to pass. So we were approaching a Christmas without my mother, and then I thought, it was about November, I thought Gracie was going to go too. And I got into bed with her, and I sang to her. Music was very important to us. I sang our favourite songs, and I very clearly said, I know you want to be with Nana, but it's not your time. I'm not ready yet. So can you please hold on? And she'd been having seizures every 3 to 5 minutes for 36 hours, completely uncontrollable. And after we had that time together and we spent that time in bed, she actually stopped seizing for 8 hours. And I felt I was incredibly proud and grateful, but I also in my heart knew that it was the beginning of the end. I knew that we had won the battle, but not the war. And I, in my heart, and I can't tell you why or how I knew this, but I knew that Gracie would go by the end of the following June. I expected her to be gone in that June, and she actually died on the 5th of July. So my estimation or my knowing was only 5 days out.
Yeah.
And
Very
that was such a blessing, which sounds really strange. It confirmed to me that I always knew what was right for her, that we were so in tune. So there's that point of that. But also, because I had that much warning, it meant that, imagine, and I'm going to ask you a question or put you in the place, Marie. Imagine you had 7 to 9 months notice that you're going to lose your husband. Would you have lived those last 7 to 9 months differently? And I say that to anybody. It was such a gift. The last 5 months in particular, my life went on complete hold. I barely left the house. I barely left Gracie. And the last 3 months, I slept on the floor on a mattress beside her bed. So we lived every minute and every day like it was her last. But those last couple of months were immersed in saying all the things and having all the kisses and making all the memories. And that's not just me, that's my husband and Gracie, Sophie, my daughter. But the last couple of months, as Gracie was really deteriorating, a couple of times a week, I would have that conversation with her about letting go. So I would say, when I was strong enough, I would say, if you've had enough, my love, you can go now. And I promised her, time to get emotional. I promised
me too.
I promised her I would be okay. And so I kept saying, my mummy will be okay without you. We will find a way to live without you. And I try very hard to live by that promise. I'm not taking particularly good care of myself at the moment. So this is a reminder, a wake-up call to go back to my promise. But coming back to, I said, you can have a good death. There's grief and there's complicated grief. Complicated grief happens when you have regrets, when there are things left unsaid, where there's shame or guilt around somebody's life or someone's passing. We gave Gracie the most amazing life possible within her limitations. And not only that, we make sure that she doesn't live a second death. So here's another thing that's really important to our family. We believe that people die twice. They die, the first time is when they take their final breath, and the second time is the last time somebody speaks their name. And so one of the ways we continue to honour Gracie is for me to have these kinds of conversations, for me to, chairing a disability organisation. I'm part of educating social workers through our local university. I give guest lectures. And this week is a very big week for us. On Friday is the large Illawarra International Women's Day luncheon. And my daughter Sophie will be presenting a scholarship, the Gracie Wallis Disabled Woman Scholarship. This will be the 4th year it's presented, and we have enough funding at this point to continue presenting for at least another 14 years, and we will continue fund or fundraise. And so there'll be over 1,100 people at this event on Friday, and there's another 1,100 people who may not know Gracie, who will know about her in a very small way. So how do we live without her? We gave her the best death, and we continue to give her the best ongoing life by speaking her name, honouring her memory, and creating impact for other disabled women and just the general community.
Susan, I just have one word. Wow, this is just so incredible. I have no other words for that. Like, seriously, just the way you spoke about her, and also what you shared with us, how you spoke to her, that brought tears to my eyes. Because, like, you know, being in a mom's perspective, I can't even imagine what that would be like to say to one of my kids, it's okay to go. You know, I get emotional just thinking about that, because it's probably one of the most beautiful ways to show your love for that beautiful child of yours. You have brought this child into the world and you release her to go. This is incredible. So much love in this act alone. It's incredible. I love that her name lives on through this beautiful award. This is really incredible that you are able to do that, and are able to do that. I'm absolutely certain we'll go way beyond the 14 years, you know, because you continue to fundraise, and just by sharing the message, and I'll do whatever I can to share your message. I just really support this. One really big topic that comes up all the time, it's also a very big topic in my own life at the moment, and for a lot of people watching this here, is balance. And that's what I want to talk to you about, because obviously when the emphasis is on one person and there is a lot of need around that person, and then of course a lot of things that happened with Gracie going to hospital, and then you almost losing her, and then her being back, your awareness, your inner knowing that she will go soon, you know, to form more and more connection. Yet on the other hand, you still have Sophie next to you that also has her needs in terms of parenting and connection with you. Then you have your husband and his needs in terms of, you know, partnership and connection with you. How on earth do you balance that when, you know, there's so much need here, but there's also that need there? Like, being a mom of two alone is already sometimes such a balancing act. And I noticed that quite strongly when Rob passed, even just saying goodnight to them. I wanted to be in both rooms at the same time and I couldn't. So how do you balance that? How did you balance that in your family?
I love that you've asked that question, because it lets me talk about something else that was really important to us.
Yeah,
I had two goals. The goal, obviously, goal one was giving Gracie the best possible quality of life. And these are not contradictory goals, or, you know, they were equal goals. So giving Gracie the best life, but also ensuring that Sophie wasn't broken by having a disabled sister. So we didn't want her to resent Gracie. We didn't want her to, and we certainly didn't want her to be broken by losing Gracie. So
of course,
we made a decision when Sophie was about 7, where we stopped buying presents and we started having experiences. So her birthday and her Christmas were experiences as opposed to more stuff.
I love it. I love it so much.
My husband spends a lot of weekends at my brother's farm. My brother has a property out near Taralga. And so there were a couple of things. So Sophie started going out to my brother's property when she was maybe 4 or 5, I don't quite recall. So they would go away for the weekend. They would have daddy-daughter time in the dirt. It's quite literally dirt, to be honest, not my thing, completely their thing. So that gave me time at home just to concentrate on Gracie and to kind of recharge, because I've got to say, so Sophie's very spirited, very intelligent, very active, and in a lot of ways that she was harder to parent than Gracie and more exhausting to parent. So having Sophie go away for the weekend gave me a bit of respite, and it gave Mark and Sophie some time to be together, so they have their thing. And to balance that out, I quite like the 5-star and the finer things in life. And so at least twice a year, Sophie and I have our big girls' weekend. It's usually just Sydney, but we'll go 5-star and we'll go to nice restaurants. Sophie gets to choose where we go and what we eat. There's usually a theatre show in it because she loves to sing. And so we, from the age of 7, so her 7th birthday, we went to see Katy Perry, which was pretty exciting. And so our balance was we couldn't go away as a family and have holidays and experiences, but we made sure Sophie had experiences with us individually, and to try and, I guess, make up for the fact that we didn't have the holidays, and so that she didn't feel like she missed out. We wanted her to not feel like she missed out on our time and our love and our attention, but also that she didn't miss out on experiences. So, you know, I like to read and research, and I like to pay attention and to what happens around me in the community. And I had seen too many examples of children resenting their disabled sibling. And so I wanted to make sure I could do everything in my power to stop that happening. And, you know, it was out of my control to some degree. It still could have gone the other way, but Sophie and Gracie ended up with the most beautiful, extraordinary connection. And this is why Sophie's happy to present a scholarship in her name, and we still honour her, honour Gracie's memory, because Sophie thinks Gracie was the best sister she could ever have, and she wouldn't have it any other way either. We miss her dreadfully, of course, but we agree that it's better to have had 13 years of Gracie than no Gracie at all.
That is so, so beautiful. And you know what, Susan, I'm actually really not just honoured, but really stoked that Sophie has agreed to do an interview with me as well. So anyone listening to this right now, buckle up for next week, because Sophie will talk to us about her perspective of the story. And this is an absolute first. We have never done that here in Love and Love After Loss. And I'm really, really grateful that you said Sophie would be more than happy to speak to me as well and share her perspective. I would love to hear from you though, Susan. How did you as a family of three cope with Gracie's passing when it did happen? You said you kind of already felt that this was happening. You sort of prepared yourself internally, yet we all know no matter how much we prepare ourselves, when it actually happens, it still hits us almost unexpectedly. So I have no other words for that, but it's just, how did you as a family cope with that? What happened after Gracie died?
Well, you know, when someone passes away, the initial reaction is to organise a funeral. So we got straight into that process. I've worked in event management, and control gives me comfort. So I took control of that process. And my husband told me later, you know, a good 12 to 18 months later, that he felt a little bit shut out in that process. And he was disappointed that, I mean, he was involved in that, you know, he was present in the meetings, etc. And I ran the eulogy by him, but I didn't actually I didn't ask him if he wanted to speak at the funeral. And he's not sure that he wanted to, because Sophie actually didn't speak at the funeral also. She delivered a poem. A friend of ours wrote a poem about Gracie, and so Sophie delivered that poem. Sophie was 11 at the time. But, you know, she does speech and drama, and so she's a accomplished public speaker, so that was also appropriate. So how did we cope as a family? My husband, so Gracie died on a Thursday evening. My husband actually went back to work on the Sunday, just for a couple of hours, and he went on his own. There was things that needed to be done, but he also recognised he wasn't doing anything sitting at home crying, and he wanted to go back to work when nobody else was there. He wanted to go back into that environment, see how it felt, because life is never the same again. So he needed to acclimatise to what new life, what work looked like. Do you mind me asking what your husband does for work? Yeah, he's a financial controller for a large motor industry, in the motor industry. So quite a big job. But I guess that's actually a really good question, because his employer was incredibly supportive. You know, a whole group of them came to Gracie's funeral, and they donated to her scholarship. And beautiful. And you know, even going back, I did a lot of fundraising for causes that were close to our heart, and I rode my push bike from Canberra to Wollongong. That's a whole nother story. But I raised $20,000 to air condition Gracie's school, and Mark's employer gave money for that campaign as well. So we are very passionate people, and everybody was involved in Gracie's life. So, you know, it's funny, it's nearly 4 years ago and my memory's dim. We, in terms of adjustment, maybe about 3 months after Gracie died, we went away on a holiday. And we'd not been on a holiday for 10 years. We'd not been able to travel together. So
that would have been my next question. I wanted to know, did you do some traveling thereafter? That's beautiful.
So we just recognised, it was about 3 months later, Gracie died in July. And about September, end of September, we went off to the Sunshine Coast for a week, just to regroup and have a rest.
Yeah. What a perfect place to do it.
Yeah, it was, you know, just to get some sun, and that was, you know, everything you do without the person you love is bittersweet. You would know every milestone is hard, and there were so many things that were not open to us as a family because Gracie restricted. The word restricted sounds negative. I don't want it to sound like that, but
I understand what you mean though.
We made our life work with hers, and so yeah, everything we did was without her has been hard and will continue to be hard. Yeah,
that's incredible. I really appreciate you talking so openly about it, because that level of bittersweet, it's absolutely true. You know, like I took the boys traveling around the world after Rob died because I knew what you touched on, the milestones. I wanted to get away from all these milestones. The first Christmas without Rob, the first New Year's, the first boys' birthdays, both in January, and everything happened, you know, one by one. And I said, you know what, we're going to go. I just literally made that decision on the spot. We're going to travel, and I booked a trip around the world for 2 months, which was so beautiful. I'm so grateful we did it. It created new memories. But as you said, all of them are bittersweet as well, because you're like, I wish you could have been there with us, because we had actually planned to travel around the world as a family of 4 for the entire 2019. The boys didn't know that at the time because we wanted to keep it as a surprise till everything was literally booked and done. But looking up there on my wardrobe, because I'm in my living room at the moment, I still have the entire itinerary with photos on the wall where we wanted to go. So I thought, okay, I cannot do this. I cannot, and I choose not to homeschool 2 boys on my own for an entire year. It would have been perfect to do that together. So what can I do? And this is the one thing I believe that we both have in common, you know, the focus on what can I do rather than what's the restriction here. And that's the entire thing that you did with Gracie as well, which I really love. You focus on the things you could do as a family rather than what can't we do. And I think that is really the message that I would love to leave our audience with today. You know, focus on the things that you can do. Focus on the things that lift you up. Focus on the things that allow some more lightness and joy into your heart. Because yes, there will be bittersweet moments. And yes, there will be moments where we realize, I wish this person was with us. And there'll be lots of those moments. It will be different. Life will always be different. Yet it is up to you what you make of it. So that is a message that I really got away from you. And I want to put the microphone back to you, the virtual one, and say, what is the message that you would like to leave our audience with before we go today?
So, 2 brief messages. Live life. Live every day as though it's your last. Say all the things you need to say, yes. You know, and that doesn't mean I'm not talking about YOLO or FOMO or whatever. Just make sure you love and you live a good life, and then leave the world a better place than you found it. So do something to leave the world a better place than you found it. Because if a 13-year-old girl who used a wheelchair and never spoke a word in her life can leave the world so much better just by being in it and by inspiring people, then absolutely everybody can leave the world better. So
you've just given me goosebumps again. Thanks for all the goosebumps today, Susan. I am so privileged to have you here today. I understand how busy your day is. That's why I was so diligent with your time as well, because you are about to go into another meeting. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so looking forward to speaking to Sophie as well. I really appreciate you sharing the story and leaving such a beautiful message. For everyone else, Susan is in our group. So if you have any comments, any questions, anything for her, please place them underneath our video here, and Susan can get back to you. Thank you so much for being here today, Susan. I really appreciate your time, your energy, your beautiful story. This is Susan and Marie signing off. Bye for now. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.